And then he said to me one day, there's this remarkable consistency in who he becomes. And that's what I need you to do as Lester. I don't want the audience to ever see him change. I want him to evolve.
In 1999, American Beauty stunned the world with its brilliance, and Kevin Spacey became a Hollywood icon overnight. But years later, he breaks his silence on what truly unfolded on set. Moments buried beneath applause, whispers no one dared repeat, and pressures that nearly pushed everything past the breaking point.
We did some things that people don't know we did. First of all, I had to be in the best shape when I won the Oscar, and my phone rang. He said, "You're a son of a..." First of all, you couldn't have done it without me.
This isn't just a behind-the-scenes story. It's a confession that forces us to revisit one of cinema's most celebrated films with completely different eyes. The pain that sparked the performer. Kevin Spacey Fowler was born on July 26, 1959, in South Orange, New Jersey. He was the youngest of 3 children. His mother, Kathleen Fowler, worked as a secretary and was known for her patience and kindness. His father, Thomas Fowler, was a technical writer who struggled with inner frustration that reportedly created an uneasy atmosphere at home. Though Spacey rarely spoke about his early life publicly, he hinted on several occasions that his childhood was emotionally difficult. The family later moved to Southern California in hopes that a change of scenery might help, but challenges persisted. To put it simply, Spacey had a difficult time expressing himself in private settings. The reason he pulled back into silence was not because he was timid. Rather, it was because he had realized at an early age that self-control provided him with protection. A rock that he threw at a fellow student resulted in his expulsion from Northridge Military Academy, where he had been attending military school for a short period of time. This act was more indicative of profound emotional disturbance than of any intent to do violence. During the time when he was attending Chatsworth High School, his life started to take a dramatically different path. It was at Chatsworth that he was first discovered by acting. Val Kilmer, who was a classmate of Spacey's, said that Spacey had the ability to convey feelings through his theatrical performances that he frequently repressed in his everyday life. Kevin was able to translate his emotions of vulnerability into controlled expression through the medium of acting, which provided an outlet for him. Not only did his instructors acknowledge his effort, but they also acknowledged the seriousness with which he tackled specific sequences. He was able to process feelings that he had no other outlet for through the medium of performing. His audition for Juilliard, which is widely considered to be among the most prominent performing arts schools in the world, took place after he graduated from high school. Beginning in the year 1979, he relocated to New York City after being admitted into the drama division. Although Spacey's time at Juilliard created the groundwork for his trade, he ultimately made the decision to quit the school after only 2 years in order to pursue a career in acting independently. He was not the type of person to behave in a conventional manner. He was under the impression that living experience would have a greater influence on him than academic frameworks. At the beginning of the 1980s, Spacey was employed in a variety of theater performances all across the city of New York. In addition to participating in workshops with experimental groups, he also appeared in Shakespeare plays and performances that were performed off-Broadway. However, those who paid attention observed his nuanced emotional intelligence, despite the fact that his work was rarely seen by mass audiences. The ability to adjust tone and facial expression with surprising subtlety was one of his many strengths. He frequently hinted much more than what was communicated in his discourse. It was a difficult time financially in the beginning. In order to have a means of subsistence in between performing assignments, he worked odd jobs such as waiting tables and aiding professionals at production offices. He gained resiliency as a result of those years. He was discreetly establishing an acting style that was unlike anyone else's, patient, analytical, and psychologically accurate. Hollywood was not yet aware of him, but he was steadily building his acting style. In the past, he made the following statement: "I did not become an actor because I wanted attention. I decided to become one because I wanted to investigate the things that people work so hard to conceal." It was later that this concept would become the driving force behind the performance that would characterize his career. Just before he walked out on stage with an Oscar in his hand, he stood in front of a mirror and practiced how to make it through his everyday life at home. What was it that took place behind the walls that he rarely spoke? And how did it contribute to him moving closer to the spotlight rather than further away from it? Overcoming stage shadows to achieve Oscar gold. When Kevin Spacey first started out in the film industry, he appeared in a variety of supporting roles during his training. It was only after some time had passed that casting directors began to realize his potential. The year 1995 marked his first appearance in the film The Usual Suspects, which would go on to become his breakthrough performance. As a result of his performance in the part of Verbal Kint, he was presented with his very first Academy Award. In the same year, he played the terrible antagonist in the film C7N, which was a demonstration of his aptitude for portraying complex characters with a calm menace. Ever since he began his career as an actor, Spacey has never been concerned about becoming famous. Specifically, he was looking for occupations that were unexpected and involved a significant amount of psychological intricacy. His interest was piqued by narratives that centered on the lives of those who were experiencing stressful situations. There are numerous tales that state that Jack Lemmon was one of his early influences and that he served as a mentor to those individuals. Having the ability to convey emotional authenticity without resorting to theatrical embellishment was something that Spacey admired and respected about Lemmon. The guidance that Spacey got would have a significant impact on his own unique style that would persist for a very long time. Spacey has starring roles in a number of films, including L.A. Confidential, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and A Time to Kill, which were released between the years of 1995 and 1996. The hushed silence that he maintained during his performances was a disturbing aspect of his presentations. In his argument, he suggested that the quiet captured on film might often speak more loudly than the words that were actually spoken. Directors appreciated him for his ability to convey inner conflict through silence, which was one of his many strengths. The theater was where Spacey proceeded to develop after his initial success. His appointment as creative director of the Old Vic Theatre in London took place in the year 2003. He finally became the director of the theater. During that time, he had been making frequent trips back to Broadway. During the time that he was employed in the film industry, he participated in stage work because he was of the opinion that theater provided a level of authenticity that Hollywood was not always able to achieve. The film that Spacey was looking for at the time was one that would put him through an emotional test rather than an intellectual one. Specifically, he was seeking for a movie that would force him to address his feelings. When he read the script for American Beauty, which was written by Alan Ball and directed by Sam Mendes, he underwent a transformation. This change was brought about by the fact that he read the script. He then claimed that the role of Lester Burnham felt alarmingly close to certain parts of my own questioning. This declaration was made in accordance with his previous statement. It was a figure that gave the impression of having everything on the surface, but on the inside, they were lacking in important aspects. There was no question in anyone's mind that Spacey would accept the role. He did research on suburban quiet, which is a way of life in which routine takes the place of meaning, in order to get himself ready. Prior to the beginning of filming, he began emulating Lester's emotional posture for a considerable amount of time. In spite of the fact that Spacey's immersive approach may occasionally give the impression that the set was heavy, Mendes supported his manner since he was aware that it would result in something truly exceptional. Spacey did not simply act as Lester, he internalized him. He climbed the ranks of Hollywood like a man racing against time. Success came quickly, but was it driven by passion or by something he was desperately trying to escape? Fame, isolation, and the price of emotional distance. Kevin Spacey has, for a very long time, been very careful to protect his privacy with regard to his personal connections. Over the course of his career, he refrained from engaging in public discourse regarding his personal life. Whenever he was asked about his romantic relationships during interviews that took place in the 90s and early 2000s, he frequently moved the conversation back to his professional life. He was of the idea that the audience should not acquire opinions about his personal identity, but rather engage with the characters he created. During the early stages of his career, he had dated women under public scrutiny, yet the specifics of those relationships were not discussed. Even by the late 90s, he had already established a reputation for being extremely private. The individuals who worked with him described him as someone who developed strong but transitory ties throughout the production process, but then withdrew once the filming was finished. Performance and seclusion appeared to be the two most important aspects of Spacey's existence. Some of his co-workers saw that when he was working on emotionally taxing projects, he would sometimes become emotionally aloof. This was not because he was arrogant, but rather because he felt the need to distance himself emotionally. He carried the mental weight of his characters even when he was not in front of the camera, and his dedication to his profession occasionally eclipsed the personal relationships he had with his own characters. While the movie American Beauty was being filmed, this pattern became more pronounced. Spacey leaned inward and frequently went for solitary walks in the intervals between scenes. After some time had passed, Mendes observed that although Spacey was not inaccessible, he was intensely focused and introspective nonetheless. In his interactions with the cast, he kept a professional demeanor, but he avoided interactions that could potentially disturb the emotional consistency he was attempting to establish for the role. After some time had passed, Spacey revealed that acting was his first serious relationship. A significant amount of his emotional energy was engaged there. He hinted that certain aspects of his private life mirrored the longing and isolation his character experienced, though he never directly confirmed the nature of those parallels. What became clear, however, was that the intensity with which he approached his work came at a personal cost. He often disconnected after projects, needing time to shed not only the characters, but the emotional residue they left behind. Only a handful of jobs would have such a profound impact on him as Lester Burnham. What happened on the American Beauty 1999 set? Sam Mendes was making his debut as a feature film director when the production of the picture began in the year 1989. As someone who had previously worked in the theater industry, he insisted on a regulated setting. It was his belief that silence provided an emotional space that allowed performances to become more profound. As a consequence of this, the atmosphere on set was uncommonly quiet and almost introspective from the very first day of production. In order to participate in the project, Kevin Spacey adopted the mentality of Lester Burnham. He maintained a certain postural heaviness, slowed down his voice, and decreased the amount of spontaneous interaction he had around him. Mendes made it possible for Spacey to freely explore nuances, and he frequently extended takes beyond the confines of the script in order to capture genuine emotional responses. When asked about the filming process, Thora Birch, who played his daughter Jane, later described it as being eerily lifelike. During the sequences in which Lester must confront his own disconnection from life, she recalled that Spacey would remain silent for a considerable amount of time after the director had called cut. According to her, those pauses in conversation made it difficult for everyone in the room to sit still. One of the most significant moments took place during the dinner scene, when Lester experienced an emotional outburst. It has been stated that Spacey remained in the emotional condition of that moment for some minutes after the filming had concluded, with his eyes downcast and rapid breathing. Until Mendes gently thanked him, nobody moved from their chairs. It was later clarified by Spacey that he was not reacting to the screenplay, but rather to what he imagined a man like Lester would feel when he could no longer pretend to be someone else. During the fantasy passages that featured Angela Hayes, who was portrayed by Mina Suvari, Spacey and Mendes came to the conclusion early on that such scenes should be handled with the utmost regard for sensitivity. In a later statement, Suvari stated that Spacey kept a respectful distance off camera in order to avoid trivializing the psychological weight of those moments. In her description of the set during those shoots, she said that it was deliberately uncomfortable, not because of behavior, but because of what we were digging into. The moment that affected the crew most deeply came during the final monologue, Lester Burnham's voiceover reflecting on life moments before his death. The narration was delivered by Spacey in a manner that Mendes referred to as having an unexpectedly personal tone. As soon as he finished the last few lines, there was no loud clapping or rapid response from the audience. The room stayed completely still, for nearly 3 minutes. A set technician later recalled that Spacey stood up slowly after that scene and with unusual sincerity thanked the crew quietly before stepping away. Many believed he had processed something personal through that performance. He never specified what it was, but he later admitted that playing Lester forced him to confront the reality of internal collapse. When filming ended, Spacey did not celebrate immediately. He reportedly stayed behind alone for a few minutes before leaving the set. One crew member said it was as if Lester remained in the house for a final moment, and Spacey needed to walk out without him. American Beauty was released in 1999 and became a cultural phenomenon. The film won the Academy Award for Best Picture, and Kevin Spacey won Best Actor for his role. During the award season, he kept professional composure, offering only reserved comments regarding his experience. Years later, when asked in a documentary interview about the emotional intensity of that film, Spacey responded, "Sometimes a character enters your life at the exact moment you're ready to hear what they're saying. Lester Burnham was that voice for me." He said nothing more on the matter. Fame brought him admiration from millions, yet he often spent his nights alone. Why did the man who could portray connection so deeply on screen struggle to truly find it off camera? Silent aftermath. When American Beauty wrapped production, most cast and crew returned to their routines. Kevin Spacey didn't. Those close to him noticed that he avoided wrap celebrations and instead spent the following days away from public view. He reportedly delayed accepting new roles for several months, not due to scheduling, but because disconnecting from Lester Burnham proved far more difficult than leaving a character usually did. Spacey once hinted in a later stage interview that he underestimated how much of himself he had surrendered to the performance. He described leaving the set on the final day, walking alone across the empty suburban-style backyard built for the film and standing in the doorway for a moment, as if deciding whether to step out as Lester or as himself. After filming, he was said to have taken an extended trip abroad without announcing his destination. A former associate suggested that the trip was not for leisure, but to process what he called emotional residue. Spacey never confirmed the trip publicly, but when he resurfaced in industry circles months later, colleagues noted a shift. His approach to acting had deepened, but so too had his distance from Hollywood's social environment. He became more selective with scripts, reportedly turning down several roles that felt too similar to Lester. During promotion for American Beauty, he gave insightful but controlled interviews, speaking about the film's themes without directly addressing how close they had come to his own life. He once quietly admitted, "Sometimes a character leaves with you. The question is, do you invite him in or learn to let him leave?" The performance earned him worldwide acclaim, but the emotional toll remained largely unseen. How one role changed his craft and himself. Following American Beauty, Spacey continued to take on roles that challenged him psychologically. His performances in Pay It Forward, The Life of David Gale, and later in House of Cards as Frank Underwood demonstrated his ongoing fascination with morally complex individuals. Frank Underwood, in particular, allowed Spacey to explore political manipulation with chilling precision, reminding audiences of the commanding presence he carried. Spacey spent much of the 2000s balancing his film work with theater leadership in London. He helped revive the Old Vic Theatre, investing his resources, time, and passion into stage performances and production. He believed that theater was the origin point of true acting, and he remained committed to its preservation. Throughout interviews across the years, Spacey occasionally reflected on American Beauty, though rarely in extensive detail. What became evident was that the role remained one of the most personally significant of his career. He said that his experience on set changed how he approached performance. He became more meticulous with emotional preparation and more deliberate about existing characters gradually. Spacey once commented that some roles leave temporary impressions, while others leave marks that never quite fade. Lester Burnham, for him, was the latter. He didn't refer to it as trauma or transformation, but simply as truth. Some stories end when the camera cuts. This one didn't. If this journey left you thinking differently, hit like, drop your thoughts below, and subscribe for more untold truths hidden behind Hollywood's brightest lights.